There are moments in the wilderness when the boundary between animal and human understanding collapses entirely, when a wild mother looks into your eyes and begs, not with words, but with a desperation that transcends language. In Yellowstone National Park, rangers encountered something they'd never seen in 40 years of wildlife management. A grizzly bear mother approaching humans deliberately, repeatedly, frantically trying to communicate that her cub was dying. Every protocol said to keep distance, to let nature take its course. But what this mother did next, the choice she made that defied every survival instinct, would force rangers to make an impossible decision that would either save a life or cost them everything. What happened when they finally understood her plea will shock you, break your heart, and prove that a mother's love recognizes no species boundary. Subscribe now because this story will change how you see the wild forever. Ranger Sarah Chen had worked in Yellowstone's Lamar Valley for 12 years, and she'd learned one fundamental rule: never trust a grizzly bear's intentions. They were unpredictable, dangerous, and protective of their territory to the point of lethal aggression. So when the call came in at 6 a.m. on a June morning about a grizzly bear acting strangely near the Soda Butte Creek Trail, Sarah expected another tourist bear conflict requiring immediate intervention. What she found instead stopped her cold. A female grizzly bear, massive, at least 400 pounds, stood in the middle of the trail, approximately 50 yards from the ranger station. But she wasn't foraging, wasn't threatening hikers, wasn't displaying any normal bear behavior. She was pacing, back and forth, occasionally stopping to look directly at the ranger station, then returning to her pacing pattern. "That's the same bear from yesterday," said Ranger Marcus Webb, joining Sarah with binoculars. "She's been doing this for 18 hours. She approaches to about this distance, paces, makes vocalizations, then retreats into the forest. Then comes back an hour later and repeats. We've never documented anything like it." Sarah studied the grizzly bear through her scope. The animal's body language was all wrong for aggression. No pinned ears, no huffing warnings, no bluff charges. Instead, the bear seemed distressed, anxious, and every few minutes, she'd stop pacing, face the ranger station directly, and make a sound that Sarah had never heard from a grizzly bear, a high-pitched, almost pleading vocalization. "She's trying to communicate," Sarah said slowly, not quite believing her own words. "Bears don't communicate with humans," Marcus replied. "Not like this. This is probably habituation. Someone's been feeding her and now she's looking for handouts." But Sarah shook her head. "Look at her teats. She's nursing. She has a cub somewhere." "And Marcus?" "She keeps looking back toward the forest, then back at us. She's not asking for food. She's asking for help." As if to confirm Sarah's observation, the grizzly bear turned toward the tree line and made that pleading vocalization again, louder this time, more urgent. Then she took several steps toward the forest, stopped, and looked back at the rangers with an intensity that was impossible to misinterpret. She wanted them to follow. "This is insane," Marcus said. "We can't follow a grizzly bear into the forest. That's suicide. She could be leading us into an ambush, protecting a kill site, or..." The bear vocalized again, and this time the sound was so achingly desperate that Sarah felt it in her chest. The animal took a few more steps toward the forest, stopped, looked back, waiting. "Her cub is in trouble," Sarah said, already moving toward the truck. "I don't know how I know, but I know. That's a mother begging for help. And we're running out of time." Marcus grabbed her arm. "Sarah, if you're wrong, if that bear attacks..." "Then I'm wrong," Sarah interrupted. "But if I'm right and we do nothing, we'll have to live with watching a mother lose her baby because we were too afraid to trust what we were seeing." She loaded the truck with medical supplies, tranquilizer equipment, and emergency gear. The grizzly bear watched from the trail, still pacing, still waiting, her dark eyes never leaving Sarah's movements. "God help us," Marcus muttered, climbing into the passenger seat. "We're actually doing this." They followed the grizzly bear at a cautious distance, driving slowly on the fire access road that paralleled her path through the forest. The mother bear moved with clear purpose, occasionally stopping to ensure the rangers were still following, her massive head turning back with what could only be described as urgency. "This is the most surreal thing I've ever done," Marcus said, his hand on the tranquilizer rifle. "We're being led by a wild grizzly bear like she's a search and rescue dog." After 20 minutes, the bear left the trail and pushed into dense underbrush. Sarah parked the truck and they continued on foot, maintaining 50 yards of distance, every nerve alert for signs of danger. The forest was eerily quiet. No bird calls, no rustling wildlife, just the sound of the mother bear moving ahead and occasionally stopping to ensure they followed. Then they heard it. A sound that made Sarah's heart clench, the weak, mewling cry of a grizzly bear cub in distress. The mother bear had stopped in a small clearing where a rock slide had created a jumbled pile of boulders. She stood beside the rocks, looking at the rangers, then at a gap between two massive stones, then back at the rangers. The message was unmistakable. "My baby is in there. Help." Sarah approached slowly, and the mother bear, defying every documented behavior pattern, stepped aside. Not far, but enough to allow Sarah to see into the gap between the rocks. A cub, maybe 3 months old, small and brown and terrified, wedged between two boulders in a space too narrow for its mother to reach. The cub had clearly tried to squeeze through and gotten stuck, unable to move forward or backward. Its hind leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, and it was panting with exhaustion and pain. "Oh God," Sarah whispered. "How long has it been trapped?" The mother bear made that pleading sound again, and Sarah noticed for the first time how thin the mother looked, how her fur was matted with stress. This bear hadn't eaten or left her cub's side, had been trying everything to free it, and when nothing worked, she'd made an impossible choice. Approach the one species that could help, even though humans represented danger. "We need to move these rocks," Sarah said, already assessing the situation. "The cub's leg is broken and it's going into shock. If we don't extract it in the next hour—" "Sarah, that mother is 3 feet away from us," Marcus interrupted, his voice tight. "The second we touch her cub, every instinct she has will tell her to kill us." Sarah looked at the mother grizzly bear. The animal was watching her with those dark, intelligent eyes, her body tense but not aggressive. And in that moment, Sarah made a choice that was either brilliant or suicidal. She pulled out her radio and spoke directly to the bear, as if the animal could understand. "I'm going to help your baby. I need you to trust me." "Can you do that? Can you let me touch your cub without attacking?" The grizzly bear held Sarah's gaze for a long moment. Then, impossibly, incomprehensibly, she sat down. Not a threat posture, not preparation to charge, but a deliberate sitting position, like a trained dog obeying a command, waiting, trusting. "Get the rope and the pry bar," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "We're doing this. And Marcus, if she attacks, don't shoot her. She's earned better than that." Marcus nodded, unable to speak, and they began the most dangerous rescue operation of their careers, watched over by a mother who'd chosen to believe that the only species she should fear might be the only one that could save her child. The rocks were massive, each one weighing at least 200 pounds. Sarah and Marcus worked the pry bar into the gap, while the mother grizzly bear watched every movement, her body coiled with tension but holding position. The cub whimpered with each shift of stone, and every sound made the mother flinch. But she didn't move from her seated position. "She's restraining herself," Marcus breathed, sweat pouring down his face despite the cool mountain air. "Sarah, she's actively fighting her instincts to protect her cub because she understands we're helping." They managed to shift the first boulder 6 inches, creating slightly more space. Sarah could now reach the cub, but extraction would require touching it, manipulating its injured leg, causing pain that would make it cry out. She looked at the mother bear. "This is going to hurt him. He's going to scream. But I promise I'm trying to help." The grizzly bear's ears flicked towards Sarah's voice, and she made a low rumbling sound, not aggressive, but acknowledging. Sarah took it as permission. She reached into the gap, her hands finding the cub's small, trembling body. The baby grizzly bear cried out immediately, a sound of fear and pain. And the mother surged forward, 3 feet in a split second. A warning growl vibrating the air. Sarah froze, her hands still on the cub. I know it hurts him, but I have to do this to free him." The mother bear stopped, stood there, every muscle rigid, maternal instinct warring with the fragile trust she'd extended. For 5 endless seconds, Sarah thought she was about to die. Then the mother bear backed up. Slowly, reluctantly, but she backed up and sat again. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she worked. "You're so brave," she whispered, not sure if she was talking to the cub, the mother, or herself. "Both of you are so brave." She carefully maneuvered the cub's injured leg, earning screams that made her heart shatter and made the mother bear whine with distress. But the mother didn't attack. She trusted. Through every terrible sound, every cry of pain from her baby, she trusted. Finally, with Marcus pulling from the other angle and Sarah guiding from below, the cub came free. Sarah caught the small body against her chest, and the cub immediately tried to scramble away, terrified in pain, wanting its mother. "Easy, baby, easy," Sarah soothed, quickly wrapping the cub in her jacket to secure it for examination. The leg was definitely broken, and the cub was dehydrated, but it was alive. She looked up at the mother Grizzly Bear, who was on her feet now, every fiber of her being focused on the small bundle in Sarah's arms. "He's alive. His leg is broken, but I can fix it. But I need to take him to the clinic. I need you to understand I'm not stealing him. I'm going to bring him back. Do you understand?" The mother bear took a step forward, and Sarah's heart stopped. This was the moment where maternal instinct would override everything, where the bear would see a human holding her cub and attack. Instead, the grizzly bear did something that would be captured on Marcus's emergency body camera and viewed by millions. She lowered her massive head and very gently touched her nose to the cub. Sarah was holding a gesture of connection, of farewell, of permission. Then she stepped back and sat again, waiting. "She's letting us take him," Marcus whispered, his voice breaking. "She knows we're going to help. Sarah, we just witnessed something that's never been documented in wild bear behavior." The drive back to the ranger station was surreal. The cub, sedated for pain management, lay wrapped in Sarah's jacket on her lap. And behind them, visible in the truck's side mirror, the mother grizzly bear followed. Not charging, not threatening, simply following at a steady pace, keeping her baby in sight. "She's not going to leave him," Marcus observed, watching the mirror. "She's trusting us, but she's not abandoning him." At the ranger station, they'd prepared a secure outdoor medical area, far enough from public access to be safe, but with clear sightlines so the mother could watch. When they arrived, the grizzly bear positioned herself 30 yards away and sat. Her eyes locked on the building where they'd taken her cub. Dr. Patricia Omondi, the wildlife veterinarian, had arrived by helicopter within an hour. She examined the cub under Sarah's watchful assistance, while the mother bear maintained her vigil outside. "Compound fracture of the left hind leg," Patricia confirmed. "Dehydration, stress, but overall remarkably resilient. This cub should make a full recovery, but he'll need surgery, antibiotics, and at least 2 weeks of intensive care before release." 2 weeks? Sarah's stomach dropped. "The mother won't leave for 2 weeks. She'll starve. And if we try to relocate her—" "We can't relocate her," Patricia interrupted. "The bond between this mother and cub is clearly extraordinary. Separating them for 2 weeks could cause psychological trauma to both animals. But keeping a wild grizzly bear near a ranger station for 2 weeks violates every safety protocol we have." Sarah looked out the window at the mother bear, still sitting, still waiting, her body language showing exhaustion and hunger but unwavering devotion. An idea began forming. Crazy, unprecedented, but maybe the only option. "What if we don't separate them?" Sarah said slowly. "What if we create a secure area where the mother can be near the cub while he recovers? We feed her, monitor her, document everything. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study maternal bear behavior, cognition, and—" "You want to keep a 400-pound grizzly bear at a ranger station for 2 weeks?" Marcus stared at her. "Sarah, that's insane. Everything about this situation is insane," Sarah countered. "That bear approached humans for help. She trusted us with her baby. She understood we were trying to heal him and let us take him. None of that should be possible, yet it happened. We owe her the chance to be near him while he heals." Patricia was quiet for a long moment, looking at the mother bear through the window. "I'll need authorization from the regional director, but if we could document this, if we could prove that grizzly bears possess this level of cognitive ability and emotional sophistication, it would change wildlife management policies across the country." The authorization came through 6 hours later, along with a media blackout to prevent crowds. They constructed a secure enclosure adjacent to the medical facility, strong enough to contain the bear, but with clear viewing access to where her cub was recovering. The hardest part was moving the mother into the enclosure. She fought, roared, resisted, not because she didn't trust them, but because every instinct screamed that entering human-made structures meant danger. It was Sarah who finally made it work. She carried the sedated cub to the enclosure door, let the mother see him, and spoke directly to the bear. "He's in here, safe, healing, you can be with him. But you have to come inside, please. Trust us one more time." The grizzly bear looked at her cub, looked at Sarah, and made a decision that defied 10,000 years of evolution. She walked into the enclosure voluntarily, lay down beside her sedated baby, and placed one massive paw over his small body, protecting, always protecting. Sarah closed the enclosure door with tears streaming down her face, and the mother bear didn't even acknowledge it. Her entire world had narrowed to the cub breathing steadily beside her, alive because she'd been brave enough to ask for help. The next 13 days became the most documented animal behavior study in Yellowstone's history. Cameras captured every moment of the mother grizzly bear's vigil as her cub healed from surgery. What they recorded challenged everything scientists thought they understood about bear cognition. The mother, whom the team named Hope, learned the medical schedule within 2 days. She knew when veterinarians would enter to check her cub, and she'd position herself calmly to the side, still protective, but allowing access. She understood that the humans in white coats were helping, and she never showed aggression toward Patricia or her team. But what shocked everyone most happened on day 7. The cub, whom they'd named Chance, had recovered enough to become mobile and playful. He was exploring the enclosure when he stumbled and cried out, not from pain, just from surprise. Hope immediately rushed to him, but then did something extraordinary. She looked directly at Sarah, who was observing from outside the enclosure, and made a specific vocalization. A questioning grunt the team had learned meant, "Is he okay?" Sarah approached the fence. "He's fine, Hope. Just being clumsy. He's healing beautifully." The mother bear studied Sarah's face, then looked down at her cub, seemed to relax and return to her resting position. She had sought human reassurance about her baby's health. She had initiated cross-species communication based on trust. "This is Nobel Prize-level behavior documentation," Patricia said, reviewing the footage. "Hope isn't just tolerating us. She's actively communicating with us. She's asking questions and understanding our responses. The neural complexity required for that. But there was a growing problem. Hope was losing weight. Despite the salmon and vegetation they provided, the stress of captivity was taking its toll. Wild bears weren't meant to be confined, and even for her cub, Hope's health was deteriorating. On day 10, Patricia pulled Sarah aside. "Hope is declining. She stopped eating entirely in the last 48 hours. If we don't release her soon, she won't survive. But Chance's leg won't be fully healed for another month minimum. Sarah, we're facing an impossible choice. Release them both now and risk Chance's leg not healing properly in the wild, or keep them here and watch Hope waste away from captivity stress." Sarah looked through the window at mother and cub, curled together in the afternoon sun. Chance was thriving. Hope was dying. That night, Sarah made a decision that would either be remembered as brilliant or the worst mistake of her career. She approached the enclosure alone, carrying papers she'd spent hours preparing. "Hope," she said quietly. The grizzly bear's ears perked up. For over 2 weeks, Hope had learned Sarah's voice, learned it meant safety and truth. "Your baby is going to be okay, but he needs more time to heal. I know you're suffering here. I know this place is killing you. So here's what I'm offering. We're going to let you out, but I'm asking you, begging you to come back every day. Let us monitor Chance's progress. Let us feed you. Let us help until he's strong enough for both of you to leave together." Sarah opened the enclosure door. Hope stood immediately, her body tense with the sudden possibility of freedom. She looked at the open door, looked at her sleeping cub, then looked at Sarah with an expression that seemed to hold an entire conversation. "I'm trusting you," Sarah whispered. "Please trust me back." Hope walked to the enclosure entrance, stood there for 5 long seconds. Then she turned around, walked back to her cub, lay down beside him and closed her eyes, choosing to stay. Choosing her baby's safety over her own freedom. Sarah closed the door with shaking hands, collapsed against it and wept. Patricia found a solution on day 12, and it was as unprecedented as everything else about this case. "We're going to create a halfway release," she explained to the team. "During the day, we open the enclosure and allow Hope to roam freely in a secured 2-acre area around the station. She can hunt, forage, be a bear. But Chance stays in the medical enclosure, where we can monitor his healing. Then at night, Hope returns to be with him. "You're asking a wild grizzly bear to follow a schedule," Marcus said. "To voluntarily return to captivity each night. I'm asking a mother to make a choice," Patricia corrected. "Freedom during the day or 24/7 with her cub? Let's see what she decides." The first morning they opened the enclosure, Hope hesitated for only a moment before stepping out into the larger, secured area. She spent 6 hours doing what bears do, digging for roots, catching fish from a stocked pond, rolling in the grass. But as evening approached, she returned to the medical enclosure on her own, lay down beside Chance and refused to leave until morning. She did this every single day. Without fail, a wild grizzly bear following a voluntary schedule because it meant being near her healing cub. By day 18, Chance's leg had healed enough for controlled outdoor activity. Patricia made the call. 1 more week of monitoring, then full release for both bears. The news spread through the wildlife biology community like wildfire. Networks requested filming rights. Scientists wanted to study the documented footage. Hope and Chance had become the most famous bears in America. But what happened on day 23 shocked everyone. More than anything that had come before, Sarah was conducting the final health check on Chance when a young ranger burst into the medical facility, radio crackling. "We have a situation. Second grizzly bear cub found trapped in the same rockslide area. Different mother, same scenario. Cub is wedged and injured." The team mobilized immediately, but when they reached the site they found something that made them stop in their tracks. Hope was already there. She'd somehow known or heard, had left the secured area, and was now sitting near the new mother bear, who was pacing frantically just as Hope had done 3 weeks earlier. Hope made that same pleading vocalization, looked at Sarah, looked at the new trapped cub, then looked back at Sarah. She was advocating, teaching, showing the other mother that humans could help. The new mother watched Hope's calm behavior, saw Sarah approaching slowly and incredibly sat down, just as Hope had done. Trusting because another bear trusted, they freed the second cub within an hour, using the same techniques, the same patience. And through it all, Hope maintained her position, a bridge between wild and human, proving that trust could be learned, that mothers would do anything for their babies, and that sometimes the most wild creatures could teach us the most profound lessons about faith. When both cubs were safe and the new mother was reunited with her baby, Hope returned to the ranger station on her own. She had a schedule to keep, a cub waiting for her, and apparently a new role she'd assigned herself: ambassador between species, teacher of trust, proof that intelligence and love existed far beyond human boundaries. The release happened on a golden morning in early July, exactly 4 weeks after Hope had first approached the ranger station, begging for help. Chance's leg had healed completely, showing only a slight hesitation in his gait that would fade with time. Hope had regained the weight she'd lost and then some, thriving on the supplemental feeding and reduced stress. But what shocked everyone wasn't the release itself. It was what Hope did just before leaving. Sarah opened the enclosure gate for the final time, expecting Hope and Chance to bolt immediately for the forest. Instead, Hope walked directly to Sarah, closed the distance to less than 3 feet, and did something no wild grizzly bear had ever been documented doing. She bowed her massive head and gently pressed it against Sarah's leg. Not aggressively, not accidentally, but deliberately. A gesture of gratitude that transcended species. "Thank you too," Sarah whispered, her hand hovering over Hope's head but not touching, maintaining that last boundary of wildness. "You taught us so much." Hope lifted her head, looked Sarah directly in the eyes with an intensity that felt like communication, like understanding, like promise. Then she turned, called to Chance with a soft grunt and walked toward the tree line. But she stopped at the forest edge, turned back one final time, and what the cameras captured in that moment became the most viewed wildlife video in internet history. Hope raising one massive paw in what looked exactly like a wave. A farewell, an acknowledgement. Then she and Chance disappeared into the wild. The footage sparked global conversations about animal consciousness, maternal intelligence, and the capacity for cross-species communication. Scientific papers were published. Wildlife management protocols were rewritten across the country, adding provisions for cognitive evaluation before determining intervention strategies. Hope's story became required viewing for park rangers worldwide. But the real miracle happened 8 months later, when Sarah was conducting a routine patrol near Soda Butte Creek. She heard a familiar grunt and turned to see Hope and Chance watching her from a safe distance. Chance was now a healthy juvenile, and Hope looked magnificent. Strong, wild, exactly as she should be, and beside Hope stood another cub. A new baby, maybe 3 months old, curious and perfect. Hope made that soft questioning vocalization, the one that meant, "Is everything okay?" Sarah smiled through tears. "Everything's perfect, Hope. You're perfect." The mother bear rumbled in what Sarah had learned was contentment, nudged both her cubs, and melted back into the forest. But Sarah knew she'd see them again. Hope had learned something profound during those 4 weeks, that not all humans were threats, that some could be trusted. That help existed if you were brave enough to ask. And Hope was teaching her cubs the same lesson, not to approach humans carelessly, but to recognize that in desperate times, in moments of crisis, there were individuals who would risk everything to help, that Sarah Chen was safe, that the ranger station was a place of healing, not harm. 6 other grizzly bear mothers brought their injured or sick cubs to the ranger station over the following 2 years, always approaching the same way Hope had, always waiting for Sarah specifically, always demonstrating that incredible trust. The phenomenon became known as Hope's legacy, and it transformed Yellowstone into a living laboratory for studying animal cognition and cross-species communication. Sarah kept every report, every video, every documented interaction. But what she treasured most was a single photograph on her desk, Hope pressing her head against Sarah's leg in that final moment before release. 2 beings from different worlds connected by the universal language of motherhood, sacrifice and trust. People ask me what Hope taught us, Sarah would say in interviews, in conferences, in the documentary that eventually chronicled the entire story. She taught us that consciousness isn't uniquely human, that problem-solving, abstract thinking, and emotional intelligence exist in forms we're only beginning to understand. But most importantly, she taught us that a mother's love, the willingness to overcome fear, to trust the untrustworthy, to beg for help from the only ones who can give it, that love is the most powerful force in nature. It crosses every boundary we think exists, and sometimes, if we're brave enough to listen,